right? Absolutely. A lot of new faces out there. That is good. Thank you so much for having me today. It is a busy session, and it's always hard to get away from that pink granite building when we're in session. But today we actually had everything done, at least for this week, so I got out. So thank you for letting me be with you today. You know, we hear, you can all hear me, right? Sounds like I'm shouting. Maybe I need to bring it down a decibel. But we all hear a lot about separation of church and state, right? Any excuse they can use, it's separation of church and state. Let's change that to separation of God and state, right? But God was never meant to be taken out of government. God set up the government. Our nation is set up on God, starting with our founding fathers, correct? Now, Tony Evans, I don't know how many of you know him. Shout out to him. He is great. And he talks about something called kingdom policies. And that laws should reflect the policies God would set if he was setting them locally, like in the legislature. Clearly, it would be policies on the side of life, correct? The side of our Creator. We all have the responsibility, no matter what position you're in, we all have this responsibility to protect the lives that He created. We all participate on the same team in one way or the other, okay? To protect the lives of life, to protect their lives. Some, we do it by giving our time, volunteer time. Some is money. You're busy, you can't do other things, but you can give money. Some are there walking. Some are talking. Some are building the strength to protect life by doing a little bit of all of it. But we all have the responsibility and accountability to protect life and help life thrive. Protection is not just to bring what God creates to life outside the womb, but how do we support that life? Wouldn't you agree? So what we do in the legislature should always fall right in line with kingdom policies. What would God want us to see, want us to do so that He can see in law that He would approve of? This session, now some of this Joe's already touched on. Senator Hughes, Senate Bill 31. And Senator Hughes, let me tell you, is a pack mule carrying a lot of water for pro-life. And he is great. But Senate Bill 31 restates in the Human Life Protection Bill from 2021, which sets up protections for the baby and defines that life starts at fertilization, conception, fertilization. The bill provides legal guidance for physicians in critical life-threatening scenarios. So what constitutes as an emergency to step in and save the life of the mother? Unfortunately, as Joe touched on, said, some have died because a doctor was not sure he or she could actually step in and save the life of a mother. Now, without question, especially with me being a doctor, that was wrong. I think it borders on a criminal act. However, the thinking was that they were given bad legal advice. Now, it's a sad day when you can't do the right thing because you feel like you're bound to law, right? But this bill does define what an emergency is, that a doctor needs to step in order to save the life of a mother. The bill also instructs physicians, healthcare providers, attorneys, and law professionals to take continuing education to make sure they understand and make sure they keep up with what constitutes protecting the life of a mother and the baby. Now, I have a bill that just addresses just the continuing education component, and that we've got that out. But so we've got coverage for making sure people get continuing education in legislation. Now, let me tell you, the Democrats were all over Hughes's bill, all over, picking it up, trying to pick it apart like they do the baby in the womb. They were trying to pick that apart, and we didn't let them. Parents here, and thank you for coming. Parents should have a say in the sex education that their children are exposed to. So one of my bills, Senate Bill 371, is an opt-in. Currently, you have to opt out as a parent, your child out of sex education in school. And why is it important that we make it an opt-in? Because we don't always know when something's going to be taught, but sex ed, in many of these classes, abortion is taught. Do we want that? No, we don't. And let me tell you something. I'm talking about legislation that I've worked on in past, but I am not in a silo to be able to pass something on my own. It does take a majority. But let me tell you this. You've got to have somebody out there, unless you can walk the halls of that pink building, you can plan on strategy of what to do. I mean, can you be there at all the hearings and listen and sit? No. But that is what Texas Alliance for Life does for us. When they walk in the door to a hearing that I'm having on some pro-life legislation, I am relieved. Because the cavalry just came in. Now, more about taxpayer dollar trickery. We all believe that no money should go for abortions. That's right. Well, SB 33, which is what I have, does that. We sure don't want taxpayer dollars going to fund abortion. And we fixed it for directly. Can't have abortions in the state of Texas. But leave it to the big cities to skirt the law. San Antonio has the Reproductive Justice Fund. Austin has the Reproductive Grant Fund. Reproductive what? Health. Sorry, I need to turn that up. And I know, it makes no sense. Reproductive health grant, when we know it goes to abortions. So what are they doing with this? What is the trickery? Well, they spend those taxpayer dollars to take a woman who wants an abortion, provide all the logistics, everything they need to get her across the state line so she can have an abortion. That's it, yes. To facilitate abortions by transporting the mother across state lines. The dollars go for anything logistically they need. Food, transportation, child care. That kind of seems a little ironic, doesn't it? Just 2 days ago, Senate Bill, and so that was Senate Bill 33 that we got passed. Now, there's a Senate Bill 2880. There is a test after this. You must remember all the numbers for the Senate bills. But he passed a bill that targets online trafficking of abortion-inducing medication. Okay? Abortion-inducing drugs. I most certainly supported that bill, and actually have another one in the wings waiting if we need it that was brought to me by the governor that reinforces you may not mail abortifacients, medications that cause abortion, into Texas. And we in Texas are putting our dollars where our laws are. The Texas Family Fund, which Joe talked about, has increased, and next budget will have $180 million in it, which is an increase. Every year it's been an increase that goes to pregnancy centers for counseling, helping mothers to become self-sufficient, and promoting stable families. You know, when I talk about not just protecting life in the womb, but how do we help and promote life outside the womb? We've got to have dollars for stable families. I'm happy to talk about adoption. It's difficult for me to talk about that sometimes without crying, because I have four adopted daughters. Now, three was when I married a widower. And now we are divorced, but the best thing that came out of my divorce were my 3 daughters. But I said 4. Whenever I work in an emergency room in Columbus, Texas, and 19 years ago, I was just minding my own business in the ER. Well, as a matter of fact, I wasn't even supposed to be in the ER that day. A doctor had an emergency, doctor had to leave. Yes, I could be there. I was tired, didn't plan on working the next day. I hadn't gotten any sleep. I was in the ER. I had cleaned out the ER, if you would, and I was going back to my room. It was 12:30 on a Sunday morning. It was 12:30 on a Sunday. And I thought, you know, I just put a little child in the hospital with pneumonia. I need to go tell the admitting doctor I've put the child in and I've written some orders. He needs to go see the patient. That's what we do out of the ER. And I was headed down to my room, and I thought, you know, he couldn't talk to me because he was delivering a baby. He's going to call me as soon as my head hits the pillow. I'm passing the labor and delivery area. I might as well just go on in there and just tell him what I did. So I go, now, I hadn't even been back there before. Missed the door. I said, where is this doctor? Well, he's back in the nursery. Where's the nursery? The hospital is this big, okay? And so I found the entrance to the nursery, walk in. I'm standing in the door frame, and he's writing, and there's a nurse over here with the baby under the French fry warmer. And I said, look, I've just put a 6-year-old in with pneumonia. I've written some orders. Please go see the child before you go. And I said, oh, is that the baby y'all just delivered? I'm standing in the door frame. The nurse says, yes. And I said, oh, that's nice. And I about finished, and they said, well, the baby's up for adoption. I said, for real? For real? Yes. I'll take it. I'm standing in the door frame. Well, what is it? Well, it's a girl. Well, I've got 3, but I'm still taking it. And I said, I'd have to ask my husband. So I walk over there. You know, all those babies look alike, right? Dirty, they need a bath, they look all wrinkly. This baby was getting at her 5-minute Apgar. So when I walked in the room, the baby wasn't even 5 minutes old. And I looked, well, what kind is she? They all look alike. They're all red. And they said, well, we think she's half Hispanic and half white. And I'm like, okay, great. Let me go call my husband. Now, we live 90 seconds from the hospital. I said, can you come up to the hospital? I want to show you something. I thought that was a perfectly good request. And he said, why do I need to come up there? Just come up here so I can show you something. 30 seconds pass. Call him back. Are you on your way? Well, no. Well, why? I'm feeding the dogs. You're feeding the dogs? Get up to the hospital. I want to show you something. What do you want to show me? Well, it's a baby. Well, I've seen babies before. Just get up to the hospital. So I meet him. I just say, I just want to show you this baby. He comes into the nursery. I go over by the French fry warmer. Standing there, he's talking to the doctor who's still there writing notes. What are you doing? Well, we're talking about airplanes. Airplanes? We're going to talk about this baby. He meanders very slowly. He walks. Peers in there. I said, isn't she cute? It's a girl. Isn't she cute? And he said, well, we were praying for a boy. Well, God sent us a girl. The doctor says, y'all take plenty of time to think this out, think this over. And they left. I'm like, oh, somebody's got to stay with the baby. But we talked, obviously got the baby. I gave her first bath. This is while I'm still on duty. First bath, and get this. So that night in the nursery, they had a nurse on who was an agency nurse, so she didn't normally work there. I went to get the baby. Now, because I was still working. I had 24 hours, had to work. 12:30, I don't have a baby. 12:35, I do. That night I am working, I go to the nursery. And I said, I'm going to take the baby to the chapel. Who are you? Now, the birth mom had to stay in the hospital for 48 hours before we could take the baby home. And she had time to change her mind. And she hadn't looked at the baby. But I said, well, I'm Dr. Campbell, who's going to adopt this child. And the first night for this child is going to be seeing a chapel. Well, you can't take it. Well, I'm taking the baby. I swooped the baby up and thought, anyway, took her to the chapel, said a prayer, took her back, put her in the fridge fry, under the warmer. And the mother did not want to see the baby. Understandable. I asked, may I see the mother? No. I asked the next day, first day, next day, no. Now we're at 36, still have 48 hours. I asked the next day, may I see the mother? I just want to tell her thank you. She said, the mother agreed. So, social worker, director of nurses, the biological mother, me, my husband, and we walk in, and I said, hello, I'm Dr. Campbell. The mother of the mother rushes in. I understand you're gonna adopt the baby? I said, yes. Now, I hadn't said anything more to the birth mom. And I said, yes. She goes, oh, we were on our way to Houston to find an adoption agency. And then you're here. She goes into early labor on the highway, sees the sign, hospital. They pull in, 12-something. Baby's delivered at 12:30. She says, she recounts the whole story and said, and now you're a doctor. You want to adopt the baby. Looks at my husband, and well, I'm a ditch digger, ma'am. And you're a doctor. So to that, and to end, I looked at the mother, and I said, hello. And I said, thank you. Thank you. You had a decision to make 9 months ago, and you chose life. God will always bless you for choosing life, and I will always take care of this baby. You know, we are on a team. You, me, other legislators that want to protect God's creation. We are the protected for life. And we are called Texas Alliance for Life. Thank you.